Welcome to the Sourcing Industry Landscape Podcast, powered by SIG.org and hosted by Dawn Tura.
Well, folks, I have another winner in the studio today. We're going to be talking to Nick Heinzmann. He's our 2022 Rising Star Award winner. So Nick, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I'm so excited to have Nick tell the Nick story, because he's somebody that has just impressed so many people. You wouldn't believe the number of nominations that he got. But before we get into his story, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. When we return, we're going to hear more from our guest, Nick Heinzmann.
Sourcing Industry Group, or SIG, is the premier global sourcing association and is widely known as a forum for providing thought leadership, networking, and training opportunities. Another central element of SIG is training. SIG is the parent organization for SIG University, which was founded on the ideals of elevating sourcing and risk professionals to deliver strategic value to their organizations and transform their careers. It was created at the request of SIG members who saw an educational training gap for today's workforce and offers one-of-a-kind certification and training programs for professionals seeking deep expertise in sourcing, governance, risk, intelligent automation, and more for themselves and for their teams. We perfected e-learning for adults before it was necessary. Our proven model for adult learners provides a flexible environment with online lessons, quizzes, and discussion forums moderated by expert faculty. Programs are offered in several different delivery models depending on you or your organization's need. Open cohort semesters start on average every 1.5 months, while closed cohorts for teams of 20 or more can start at any time. In addition, we also have self-paced or fast-track options. You can learn more about all of these offerings on the SIG website or by reaching out to one of our representatives. So make sure to take advantage of all that SIG has to offer for both members and non-members alike, because there really is something for everyone.
Welcome back, Nick. So Nick, let me just tell our audience who you are. He's the Vice President of Research at Spend Matters. He has set the research and publication agenda. He also has served as the lead analyst for several technology categories, including contract lifecycle management, or also known as CLM, fraud analytics, startups, and ESG-focused vendors in and around the source-to-pay market. In his spare professional time, Nick enjoys working with investors and corporate development executives to explore emerging trends and opportunities in the procurement technology market. Now, prior to his role as an analyst, Nick ran production for Spend Matters brand studio engagements, as well as served as a site editor for Spend Matters. He's a two-time graduate of Northwestern University. He holds an MSJ from the Medill School of Journalism, Media, Integrated Marketing, Communications. Wow, that's pretty impressive, Nick.
Oh, thanks. It's, I think in my relatively short career, been a fun ride of trying a bunch of different things. And so far, it's opened a lot of doors into a lot of different interesting topics that, to be honest, even when I graduated from school, I had no idea about. So it's been exciting to learn about all that as I go along.
So good. Let's talk about your journey. So you graduated college after you've got your master's. Where did you go? Was Spend Matters your first place?
Yes, it was. Funny enough, at the end of college, I was in grad school for journalism. My ideal goal was I wanted to be a copy editor at the New Yorker. And I wanted to just be the expert on putting in too many commas into a sentence, understanding how to correctly identify specific objects and syntactically the right order, how things should go in a sentence, the rhetorical devices needed. That was the ideal for me. And I came about Spend Matters because actually, when I was doing part of my work at Medill, I was assigned on the internal news desk. There's a media service there where they publish reports, and that's how you get some experience. So I was in Chicago, and I wanted to do something that was very real, very relevant. Because we're in Chicago, I chose derivatives because the Board of Trade and Chicago Mercantile Exchange are here. So a lot of commodities and commodity futures are traded through Chicago. Because I had that experience, and I spent an entire half a year basically calling farmers, calling the Fed, and asking about corn prices. I had experience writing about commodities. So when I came upon Spend Matters during the career fair, looking for my first job out of grad school, I parlayed that into writing about what I understood to be supply chains, procurement, and commodities. At least I thought I knew a little bit about it. Funny enough, I didn't know anything about procurement at the time. I knew about commodities markets and how those price movements worked and how those mechanisms worked, but I didn't understand anything about the actual mechanisms of purchasing, let alone the technology that goes along with that.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't, I mean, that's not something that you would have learned in school with the direction you were going.
No, not at all. But a lot of my experience and where I am today is in a large part due to what I set out to do. I wanted to be a copy editor, but as anyone who's done editing as a career knows, there's a certain degree of needing to understand the subject matter in order to truly be able to work with the person's writing. So sitting down with my boss's writing, with our chief research officer's writing, I had to understand what they were talking about, which is sometimes easier said than done with rough copy, as anyone who knows who has worked with digital research before.
That's true. So did you start to fall in love with procurement then as a result? Or was it that you just loved the technology side of it? Because you're here, you're not at the New York Post. So there must have been a reason.
So it wasn't like an immediate fall in love or anything. More than anything, what got me into this space deeper and deeper was being given harder and harder problems to solve. And I think that's just the reality of being at a changing and fast growing company for a while, is that a place like Sven Matters, we do a lot of different things for a lot of different people in the ecosystem of who we work with. You hear in my bio, we work with practitioners who are doing tech selections. We work with vendors in the space. We work with investors, consultants as well. And bringing all of those interests together actually was what made me fall in love with more the research process than anything. Was being presented all of these different perspectives, whether it was like the big macroeconomic drivers that were causing technology providers to spin up new solutions, new modules, or the kinds of intermarket forces that would make consultant firms partner with one vendor over another. Being able to figure out what those drivers were and then make helpful recommendations. And that was the thing too. It's like I was writing about corn not because I just was fascinated by the farming process. I was writing about corn because I wanted to figure out how the world worked, but also provide useful information to people to help them make decisions. In a way, I see this as an evolution of that. I've been working with my team to create and understand data about technology providers so that we can make helpful recommendations, help people make better, more informed decisions about what to do. So that process is what I fell in love with more than anything.
That is a cool analogy. I like that. And so the process was the same, studying corn, studying what you're learning, but you stayed on at Sven Matters. You never went to New York City. And you've continued to progress from a very junior role to vice president at a really young age. So tell me about that. Was it just so exciting to be able to move up and get all these different roles or what?
Well, like I was saying, it was about finding more interesting problems to solve. I had an appetite for tackling especially problems or research questions that didn't have clear answers at the outset. Some of the stuff we've done in the past year or two around understanding the overlap of the source to pay market, the one you'd normally associate with procurement technology, with specialists in ESG or specialists in GRC, and especially also in supply chain, all of these different areas coming together and figuring out how that works together at a really technical level, but also at a market level, how people make decisions about those kinds of technologies, how you, at an enterprise level, rationalize the need for maybe a procurement department's requirements on technology versus what a chief sustainability officer might want, a VP of supply chain might want. So part of me being able to rise up in the organizational ladder was really just the more trust I was able to earn through doing more kinds of work. Was I wanted more difficult problems to work on, and that has resulted in me getting myself into scenarios where I need help. I need multiple people to solve those problems, and we over the last year have built out not only our senior research team but also hired, for the first time in the organization, our own team of associate analysts that we've built a training program around. And for me, that was a proud accomplishment, not just seeing more people grow and the organization grow, but I, with the help of my own mentors learned this subject, but I did have to teach myself some of this stuff, and being able to show that even if you didn't come from a procurement background, that you can learn the subject. And this is what you guys do at SIG too. You guys are teachers. So being able to build what we call like a knowledge base, but also mentorship around that, all with the goal of solving problems. Is like, I come into these like sticky problems, big answers that we need to give to a consulting partner on what they want to do next with technology in their practice. That kind of thing is really fun to do, especially with a team now. It just allows us, like I said, to tackle more interesting challenges and questions.
So on a personal note, you've always appeared to look young, and yet you're so knowledgeable. Has that ever been an issue, getting people to understand that you really are this body of knowledge where they might be fooled by the facade?
Yeah, it's something that we joke around about all the time. I think part of the reason that I've actually enjoyed working in the investment space so much is because some of the workers and people doing a lot of the analysis on diligence are younger, so it's a bit easier for us to relate to each other.
Yeah.
In scenarios where I do look young, and people are always shocked to look at me and they say, well, it's funny, when I tell them I have kids, it helps. They start to say, oh, okay, that's interesting. Now I trust you a little bit. So you have little techniques to help build trust, both from a professional capacity, but then it's always an initial issue, but knowing that, you have to understand how to address it. It's by not being in a scenario where you are trying to prove how knowledgeable you are. You're trying to show, I understand you're more senior. I understand you have experience. Tell me how I can help you, and we'll see if we can find common ground. Finding that common ground is, regardless of age, the best way to help. And I think just not letting ego get in the way. It's not a problem. It's about learning how to build trust quickly. And I do find, frankly, that once we get into the discussion technicals, allow people to be open with what they initially think. It doesn't hurt after a while. It gets moved aside pretty quickly.
Yeah, and in some ways too, and being underestimated and really wowing them. I mean, there is a really cool factor that way as well. That they come in expecting one thing and they walk away going, wow, I was so wrong at initial judgment on somebody. So I love that part of it as well. So Nick, if you were to talk to your younger self, now it has been how many years have you been out of school now?
7.5. It was 2015. So yeah.
Okay. So if you were to go back to when you were graduating, before you had decided to go to Spend Matters, let's say, what advice would you give to that younger Nick?
Geez. If I could talk to him, I'd say, do not assume that any plan or path you decide on is going to be the same 5 years from now, 3 years from now, maybe 1 year from now. There's so much less predictability and ability to plan in life, especially career, than you might think there are. And I think I've just learned that at 30 at this point. It's funny, some people are planners, and I'm someone who likes to plan. It's part of work, part of life. But one of the more interesting tidbits on both business and personal planning I've read, Michael Bloomberg's biography, he talks about, like, the best way to make a plan is to write it all down on the paper, and then after you do that, tear up the piece of paper, because nothing is going to be the same a year from now that you think it is. You have it in your head, and you should just go do it and see what happens next. That's not my mode, but I would go tell my younger self, that's going to happen all the time. So figure out where the opportunities are as they arise, make a decision, and don't worry about where it's going to lead next, because there's going to be, there'll be stumbling blocks for sure, but there's going to be more opportunities too. You have to learn to wait for when the right ones are going to come along, and then know how you're going to think about and decide when you're going to take them.
Yeah, and it's such great advice for anyone at any age to say, Nobody's on this straight and narrow path that they never, if they are, they're probably not going very far down the path. And if you're open to little zig and zag, you can have such an exciting time with life. Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, I would love to invite you back to the podcast because now we've heard from you as a rising star, which means that you have been recognized as someone who is really up and coming earlier in their career and destined to do great things. And so I have a feeling there'll be more awards in your future. So I would love to invite you back for an update.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back. There's lots of great research we're doing. And even beyond that, I love talking about the space with people at SIG who are so much in it with people who are leading it. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. No, we love it. And we love Spend Matters and everything that you guys produce. You really are the thought leaders on everything to do with procurement technology and now with the consulting firms and working with emerging markets. It's pretty cool stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And making sure that everyone agrees and has their voice in that process of figuring out where the research goes next is important to us. So we value your input.
Good. Well, folks, we're talking to Nick Heinzmann. He's the 2022 Rising Star Award winner for the Future of Sourcing Awards. And make sure you contact Nick and put him in your network. He's somebody who truly is passionate about what he does. He is always willing to talk. He's been gracious every time I've met with him. And I can't wait for us all to just watch Nick as he progresses in his career. So join us on a podcast again real soon and make sure you reach out to Nick and make him part of your professional network as well. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for your time today.
Great. Thanks so much. A lot of fun.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Want to nominate yourself or someone else for an interview? Email us at podcast@sig.org.